in terms of the infrastructure of the city, in terms of the sewer, the water, in terms of just our government buildings, and a lot of concern in terms of City Hall, in terms of needing a DPW building. How do we address this? Our reserves are low at the moment. How do we address? And I think a lot of folks are nervous. Taxes is a nasty word for taxpayers. And so how do you address that? How do you plan to address that in in tackling those issues one by one when we're not in a extremely cash positive situation right now?
So the number one word is planning. You have to plan like anything else. And we have started planning. We at one time had over $17 million in our stabilization fund. It was drained. And when then Bill Manzi came in, we had literally nothing. And we, at that time, were going through the Great Recession. So we had just, it was just hard everywhere. People were losing their houses, jobs, and everything else. That council, we persevered on that council. That was the year when the unions gave 10% back. Every union in the city gave 10% back. And the mayor did too, and the city council did too, even though it was a small token from us. It was about $480, but it just showed that we believed that that was the best thing to do so that our city wouldn't lose services, wouldn't have to cut personnel, and wouldn't have to do a large tax increase. That to me is leadership. Um, Going now into where we are today, although again that contract, had it been honored, there was a lot of money in there. We do have money in our reserves because we're putting money in there each year. We also have been given some safeguards by the Department of Revenue, which as the City Council has put in to allow us to budget properly. And one of them was the buyback, the sick and buyback time that employees are due when they retire. And I think, we have a new line item. So instead of it when an employee retires, we're always saying, where do we get the money? We got to take it from here. We got to take it from here. We just established a couple of different line items, and whether somebody retires, the money goes in there, and it's used as a reserve account, and it should be used for that purpose. So that's number one. Number two, the infrastructure. Let's talk about the streets. We get Chapter 90 money every year from the state. It's our taxpayer dollars, but it's what we pay in our state taxes. And then they give that back to cities and towns along with the cherry sheet, and we can use that money to fix roads, predominantly well-traveled roads, such as Pleasant Valley Street, Merrimack Street, Pelham Street, Lowell Street. That's where you see all that money. However, we can't forget the small streets, the streets that have been there for years, but those are considered what they call non-accepted streets. And I have been getting calls over the years, Jennifer, we can't even drive down our road. The road is bad. So I had started asking Mirzani when I had come back, what are we going to do? We have to do something to these side roads. And, they used to say, well, they're not accepted. Well, how do we get them accepted? Because we can't just leave those roads and have them not accessible to, emergency vehicles if needed. So the first year that Mayor Jajuga was in, we ended up putting um, a line item for unaccepted streets, and we put $250,000 in there. And now a few of them, such as Palermo Street, Torino Street, they're not accepted. They're not getting all torn up, but they are getting at least a coat of tar on them so that they are passable for the residents and for the emergency vehicles if needed. So there is a plan, and that was one of the initiatives that I had pushed forward. So now every year in our budget, regardless, 250,000 is going in there, and that's just showing you how we're working to fix the infrastructure. We can start looking into, as you mentioned, do we take a look at, open up a road, find out how the water main, because we've had a lot of water main breaks. Do we start being a little bit more proactive and say, let's identify streets and just take a look at, are we ready for a main break? Do we, and that's something we could look into.
What are the main, as you've gotten to know your opponent and as you've gone through this campaign, I think some of the debates, some of the forums, I I think voters can naturally see some differences between both candidates. From your perspective, what differentiates you from your opponent in terms of how you'll lead the city?
Well, that's a great question. And when you hear people say, again, we want change, I am telling you now, and I said it at the end of my last debate, Mr. Perry's face may be new, but there is no change there. There is no change. Believe me, I have been here, and we talked about my 2013 race. The same people that ran back then in 2013 are the same supporters that my opponent has. I am independent. I have always been independent. I have worked with 3 mayors. My first one was Mayor Manzi, second one was Mayor Zani, and the third one was Mayor Jajuga. Anybody could look at any of those meetings. Never, never I don't go along. Do I get along? Yes, but if there was something that was voted that I did not feel was in the best interest of the city, I have no problem saying no. I think that my decisions that I will be making as mayor will be Jennifer Kannan's decisions. Nobody will tell me. I will absolutely sit down with anybody who wants to give me their input for me to make a decision. But when my decision is made, it will be my decision and solely my decision, based on my experience in the city, based on, what department is coming in. I will know exactly, again, if the community development department is coming in, whether it's for marijuana, whether it's for, new development, whether it's for, you know um, whatever they want to bring in front of us. I will have the experience to understand it and then make my decision. But I'm sorry, but my opponent doesn't have 1 day experience, not even on the school committee, not even on the city council, not in the mayor's office. So he will have to take his orders from somebody else. I mean, how do you go in that office not knowing one thing to do as far as the city of Methuen? And that's just my opinion.
So we've been talking for a bit here. I wanted to hit on two issues. One that's obviously a hot button issue. One that was a hot button issue but hasn't been talked about. First one is marijuana and how you. It's been kind of kicked down the road a little bit in terms of how we've dealt with it, and how the last administration dealt with it. It's it seems in terms of timing that it's going to be something that we're going to have to definitively make a decision on here in the next couple of years. How, in terms of how will you lead? Where do you stand on medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, marijuana as a business opportunity in terms of production facilities? How will you address that issue from a government level?
So, just for the record, because I have no problem saying it, I voted for um, medicinal marijuana when that was on the ballot, and I voted against recreational marijuana when it was on the ballot. I believe that the medicinal one is needed, and I believe if it was administered, through the proper procedures, I think that people should be able to get that if they needed that for their medical purposes. The recreational marijuana, as far as, I mean, I know it passed and I know it's legal, but my no vote on that when I went into the ballot box was because there was just too many unknowns regarding public safety, and I had a problem with that. I just don't feel municipalities should have to have that, um, responsibility to have people smoking in cars and not knowing how much they can smoke, and then if they get pulled over by the police, what is their rights as a police officer to, can they be pulled over? How much marijuana can they have? I just thought there was not enough information that came out, so I voted for that no on that. When I was on the city council, there was a moratorium that came that I did support the moratorium, which, because Methuen was in the majority of Methuen residents voted no on the recreational marijuana, that we had time to say right now, no, we don't want any stores here right now until we can get answers. I still stand by that, as far as until the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission in Boston, they should be the ones that are regulating this. For our municipalities, we don't have the resources to to try to figure this one out. But I still think that we should have the discussions because I believe in the discussion. And we just had the Community Development Board, they put together a commission and they were going to just come to us. We're supposed to be having a joint public hearing with them. It will probably be sometime in November. And to discuss what they did. They did a lot of work on where they think these facilities should go, whether it was cultivating, recreational sales, and we shouldn't say no that we don't want to have the discussion. We need to have the discussion as elected officials. Maybe we find out again, what other states are doing, or even other cities and towns. Where are they putting these? But it is our duty to have the discussion. Just to listen, whether you want to vote yes or no after you have all your information, but it is our duty to find out anything that could, number one, bring tax dollars in. There would be a series of public hearings, making sure to see what the residents of Methuen want, but we definitely, it's our obligation to at least have the discussion.
The one issue in terms of that I wanted to address that I have not heard addressed a ton in this campaign, which has been disheartening because it was at the time a hot button issue during the last election cycle. We're sitting in downtown doing this interview.
Yes.
It's encouraging that you chose to make your offices in downtown. There's been very little follow-up discussion in terms of what the public has heard in movement towards a plan for the downtown, for whether it be updating it, for what the long-term vision of downtown is. There's parking concerns. We do have a new mixed-use building that's just about completed, but that's even going to create some more parking issues. Good and so there's good and bad things that come with that. How, whether it be the short term, the long term, how will you move the discussion and the planning forward in terms of a long-term vision for the downtown corridor?
So I do think that the 40R that we passed is definitely something that has to stay down here. As you talked about the one building, it's right across the street, and that building is coming out beautiful, but it takes a while. It takes funding, and it takes a business person that wants to invest and in the vision, and it has to be to invest in the vision. And Johan, who owns Home Properties across the way, this is his project, and they are going to do a couple commercial stores downstairs with residential apartments upstairs, and that's what a lot of these communities are doing. Your Newburyports and other areas, they're creating this mixed-use property that you are having businesses downstairs with foot traffic upstairs, and that's how the 40R works. There are right down at the end of the road on Broadway, there was another house. It burnt down. It's absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's the blue house on the corner of Broadway and High Street. And that is going to be another nice addition as a mixed-use property. Then we're going to have the property on Osgood Street. Again, you do zone it for 40R, but then there's the process of finding out who's going to come down here. I had heard, I don't know if it's still something that's viable, but that they wanted to put some type of village over there down where the old Shaddies was, and the VFW is down in the back, so I don't know where that stands right now, but I do know that the community development is working with it. They have the rail trail there, so I think you put the 40R zoning in. The store, that wonderful store right at the corner in the old Robichaud Hardware, he's made that property look beautiful, and been in there, and his products are great, so stop by there if you can. But I little by little, everything isn't quick, and but if I'm lucky enough to be mayor, I'm going to continue with the 40R, and you will start seeing some differences as time goes by.
So we're over an hour now, and so I don't want to take up your entire day here, but in terms of issues we have not addressed, I want to make sure that I appreciate you taking the time, as many of the candidates have and will. I'm alarmed that some of the candidates won't, quite honestly. but I do appreciate the time you're taking.
I do want to comment on that, though.
Oh,
I want to comment on that. And again, as always running, I've been doing this, like I said, since 2007. If I've ever been invited on anybody's show, it's out of respect of all media, because every media outlet may have a different way that they do their, whether their shows or their journalistic writing. And I just believe that every person who invites me, I go. I've never refused to go on anybody's show, and because you have different audiences. And I think the more people out there that are hearing from the candidates, at least they can reach different audiences. So I just want to state that.
in terms of issues that we haven't hit on, we've covered a lot of ground, but are there specific things we haven't talked about that you want to make sure you get out to the voters?
I do. I just want to make sure that the voters know. Take a look at my record. The buzzword again was the conflict of interest and um, police contract. Honestly, you look at my record for 10 years. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be, going through this process if I did not feel that that I could do the job right on day one. So I want the voters to know that, and just for them to know, look at both the candidates, and I think you will see the strong contrast between myself and my opponent.
In terms of what you're doing when you're not uh, city councilor or candidate, what do you and your family do for fun?
Well, we went to Maine this year, but for a vacation, it was wonderful. We had a good week, but I was back in Methuen 2 times. Dave Bartlett had a meet and greet for a lot of the candidates prior to the primary over at Heavenly Donuts on Pelham Street. So I came down and did that. But, I'm just very involved in the community, very involved with my grandchildren. And of course, I have my daughter who's a senior in high school, and she's starting to look at colleges. So uh, we're looking at that. And so just we're very busy. I have my parents, my father's retired. They live here in Methuen, so I spend time with them. So we're here in Methuen, and then I know Bill Bryant, who's always getting us for the bubble or for the anything that has to do with the boosters. So going to the football game and watching them play, and just being around the city. That's what we do. That's what we've always done.
All right, so in but that rare moment where you're not a grandmother, you're not a mother, you're not volunteering or working as a realtor. Like, what's the me time? Like, what is your, I don't know, guilty pleasure, or like what, like when you do
Just hanging
steal?
out,
Yeah,
just hanging out with my close friends and family.
that's fun for you.
That's fun.
I'll give you the, as we end here, the the 90-second elevator pitch that you guys make at the end of these forums or these debates. What is it in a nutshell that you want to tell the voters to get them out on November 5th and to support you?
So thank you for that. And so I want to say thank you for everybody who watched this today. And Tim, thank you for taking your time to let me talk to you for over an hour. But I think it's very important to get out November 5th. Our city this is a big turning point for our city. I think that to hear the word change, I really want you to know what change is. Change is somebody who I have never had any strings attached to me or my candidacy. You can ask former city councilors that I've sat with who support me. They will never say, oh, Jennifer was tied to any specific candidate. I've always been independent, and I always will be. That's one of my strengths. And I think that's one of the reasons why people have elected me as their councilor at large every time I ran. But sometimes when you're, believing these pitches out there that, oh, we're going to be new, we've already gone through that before, and I just don't want the residents of this community to be misinformed. And that is why, if you go to my website, I will never misinform you. Anything that I say on my website will be facts, and the facts will be backed up. If you don't get any answers there, you can feel free to call me or email me. When you go to my website, you will be able to see that I am always accessible to the residents of Methuen, always have. Anybody who's called me to fix a problem, I can't say that I can fix everything, but at least you get a phone call back from me, and I will try my best to help you, or at least direct you in the right direction. That is what else that I am known for. But you really have to get out to the November 5th election. It is a very important election. We had a low turnout in the primary, and that happens. But get to the polls, get your family to the polls, and if you give me a chance, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I want to say thank you to everybody out there, and hopefully it will be successful in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.